Hi guys! What a beautiful September day. There was no chance I was staying in today. Today I will show you something that I call for bushcraft engineering, some aspects of it. That is like building stuff using simple physics, and the things that you make can be of extreme importance in survival or perimeter defense or whatever. But first I'm going to set up my camp here. Got a tarp with me. This is a great spot. Right, so that gets my coffee going. So let's start doing something more interesting. Yeah, right, bushcraft engineering. Yeah, I call it that way because it's a form of engineering. You need to know some basic physics and to understand what you're doing instead of just blindly copying. It's best to understand why something happens, and I apply that in most all I do, especially when I'm building shelters or there's one film, the emergency trunk lift, where I use rope to create a pulley system. It's really nice to have a basic understanding of such concepts. Today the idea is to talk about triggers and releases. Might be somewhat controversial subject, because the use of it of course is for triggering stuff, and that can be used in trapping. But with that it's also an extremely important knowledge for survival. It's not only trapping, it's also for perimeter defense. Say you have a camp, you want to sleep, there's a lot of predators. It's really nice to be able to construct a perimeter defense so that you get alerted when there is predators like bears and so on. But they all need some kind of triggering. And the actual problem with these kinds of triggers or quick releases or whatever is that you quite often have a big force that you need to trigger with a very small force. And that's where the physics comes in. Of course, you're not going around in the forest with a lot of stuff and building materials and whatever. The idea is that you can build all that with just a knife, your machete or your knife or whatever. So it's really nice to have some things with you. I always have a machete. In there I have a Lapland saw. Of course I have always a fire steel and my Medicat on it. Equally important is cordage. Actually they are a part of the C's of survivability. Cutting tools, cordage, cover. But cordage is really important for doing stuff, for being able to create shelters and whatever. So I got some paracord here, I got some thicker rope, and usually I carry a lot of these smaller pieces of thin rope. These are great, they are hard to spot as well. So yeah, once my coffee's done I will start showing you some stuff. Right, here you see a very simple way of storing potential energy. You see the tree is used as a spring, and a rope goes down towards the peg there. So, I will show you that in detail later, but this rope is tied to this little stick, and there is a stick in the ground, and both have a notch. The notches are gripping one another, and there is very little force needed to release it. See? There is a little rope here, and if something tugs on this little rope just slightly, it will release. So this was the pin that was into the ground. You see there is a notch in there. And this is the stick that was on the tree. And that one has a notch on this side. And they grip each other like that. And by making it rounder, you get more of a hair trigger. It all depends on how much force you want to put on this. So this is absolutely one of the simplest and most crudest set ways to create a trigger. We will now go to something more advanced, because you can still have with this that you need quite a lot of force to get this out. Like I said, it depends on how rounded you make all this and how big. You can also make, and then we are going into the next thing actually, if you make this longer and you fix the rope on the end, then you get some kind of a lever. And leverage, that is what this is all about. Not this particular one, but most of the kind of triggers that we use. So, now an altogether more sophisticated way to get a trigger or a release. Took the same tree, rope goes down on it, it stores the potential energy, and there I got two forks in the ground, a toggle that is wrapped around it, and a little stick balanced against another stick. I will show you that. This is the rope, this is the toggle. It uses a leverage to push it down. That means that the forces on this are way less than on the rope. The stick is balanced against another stick there. So, and I will now try to show you how it works. This is not an application, it is just simply made. In real life you would, depending on why you're doing this, either hide this, make a platform, or whatever. But I will show you this. You see? That worked beautiful. So, what is the physics behind this? The whole trick is in this phenomenon that you have a toggle, and if it rotates, I will show you that from the side. If it rotates around this stick this way, then you see this bit is much longer than where the rope is attached. That means that you get a lever here. And by doing this, pushing this backwards, requires much less energy to create much more energy on this rope. It's just like using a wrench or a tool. You're using the length of the stick to put the tension on. That means that the little pin that was balanced on this stick doesn't get the same force as was from the tree on the rope. That means it only needs very little force to dislodge that stick. It's like a quick release. And that is the engineering, the physics part behind this, and this is used in almost all triggers. Because you quite often need a very little force, even a hair trigger-like thing, to dislodge something that has much more potential energy stored in there. In this case I had attached a little rope with a noose. It was obviously to demonstrate this mechanism, because it grabbed the big pole. But in a survival situation, of course, you can make traps with this. You can make warning systems with this by putting on the thin balancing stick, tying a fishing line around so that like a tripwire. For trapping you would put bait on that little stick. So yeah, a very nifty application of simple physics really. Okay, this is a completely different way of creating a trigger. You see there is a stake into the ground, and it keeps the little toggle there upright using this little rope on the button there. And again, this is the physics of a lever, because the forces to keep this one tied to the stake are very little in comparison to the forces that are on the string. The two stakes, the toggle and the stake, are very round. That makes it extremely sensitive. So it is very easy to dislodge the toggle from the stake there. There is like a bow. The bow is storing the potential energy, and once it releases, it will pull away the little pin that keeps up the log. Let's see how it works. So I was actually going to give you a close-up on this one. You see that that's the actual trigger. You see the little string on the bottom keeping the toggle in its place. Then there is the string going to the bow. The bow is kept in place by two simple stakes so that I'm able to tension the bow. And then you see there is a little rope going to the balancing pin. I use a stone there because otherwise it would drive into the ground and it wouldn't dislodge. And then that is the log. Very simple, but very interesting indeed. If this was a trap, of course, you would put the trigger mechanism under the deadfall, under the weight that's going to crush your prey. And you would typically put some bait on that stick. I made them especially big now, just to demonstrate it. You would make this much more small. That's for if it was a trap. It was so much fun to see this one work, so we do it again. Great. Well, I had a great time showing you the various releases and triggers. I hope you found it interesting. I really like it. I always like engineering and physics, and especially when they get applied into bushcraft and survival. There are a great number of applications of these trigger devices. One of them, of course, is trapping. I want to stress that trapping is for survival only. It's not something that you would do just for fun or anything else. Primitive traps is for pure, simply saving your life. On the other hand, making warning systems around your camp for predators and so on, that's perfectly okay. But again, don't leave your materials out in the woods when you pick up your camp. Long pieces of string and fishing wire and stuff like that. Animals can tangle up in them and die. So be very careful with that stuff. Gather all your materials and leave a safe environment for the animals. Well, like I said, I hope you enjoyed it, and see you again in the next film. Bye guys!